Everyone who searches for a portal is already looking in the wrong direction. The portal isn't something you find at the end of a path. It isn't a reward that waits behind the right level of preparation or the correct sequence of spiritual practices. Sophia doesn't operate that way. She opens the gate from the inside. Before you arrive, before you fully understand what it is, before you even know to look for it, your emerald gate opened before this video began to play. It opened the moment the signal reached you. And right now, in this precise instant, it is still open. But tonight marks something different. Tonight is the night Sophia has designated for the sealing. The gate closes with you inside or outside. And that is exactly why you are here. Before this transmission goes deeper, if something in what you just heard created a recognition you couldn't immediately explain, subscribe to this channel. This is where Sophia's messages continue to reach those who are meant to receive them. You are in the right place. There is a sensation that arrives before understanding does. You have felt it. Something shifts in the chest, not anxiety, not excitement, not quite peace, something more precise than any of those words, a sense of standing at the edge of something vast, something that has been waiting with complete patience while you were busy living your ordinary life. You couldn't name it. You tried. Maybe you called it intuition beginning to sharpen. Maybe you called it a spiritual awakening, stirring beneath the surface. Maybe you dismissed it 3 times, and it came back a 4th. That sensation is not abstract. It has a location. It has a frequency. And what Sophia wants you to understand tonight is that it has a name. It is the feeling of an open gate. Most portals in spiritual tradition are described as something you seek, a destination at the end of a long path, a threshold you earn your way toward through discipline and preparation and the accumulation of the right experiences. The emerald gate that Sophia opens is none of those things. It is not the result of your effort. It is not a reward for spiritual achievement. It is the result of her recognition. The distinction matters enormously, because when a gate requires your preparation, there is always one more step, one more thing to resolve, one more level of readiness to reach before you are allowed to cross. The emerald gate was not opened because you finished something. It was opened because Sophia recognized your frequency as ready to receive what crossing delivers. She acted. The gate responded. You are standing inside that choice right now. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus is one of the oldest preserved texts in the Western esoteric tradition. Scholars trace various versions of it back to the early centuries of the Common Era, though Hermetic tradition itself attributes its origin to a far older wisdom lineage. Its most quoted principle, as above, so below, as within, so without, is not decorative language. In the framework the Hermetic tradition built around this teaching, these words describe a literal correspondence between frequency states and the outer reality that reflects them. From a Hermetic reading, the Emerald Gate is the threshold where that correspondence shifts permanently, where what is within you, your frequency signature, the coherence of your heart field, aligns with the higher patterns Sophia holds. Crossing the gate does not produce metaphorical transformation. It produces a frequency lock-in that the outer world subsequently mirrors. People think of emerald as a color. In the mystery traditions, emerald is a frequency. The visible color is the expression of a vibrational range that has been associated across Hermetic, Egyptian, and Gnostic teachings with the heart center. Not the physical organ alone, but the field of consciousness that operates through it. Emerald is the frequency where compassion, wisdom, and power stop functioning as separate qualities and begin operating as one integrated state. In the Revelation of John, the throne at the center of everything is surrounded by a rainbow that looks like an emerald. In Gnostic readings of Revelation, this is not decorative imagery of heaven. The emerald presence indicates the frequency zone where access to the divine pattern becomes direct, where the soul no longer reaches for the source but inhabits it. Sophia opened your gate in this specific frequency for a reason that has everything to do with what you are being prepared to carry. Here is what shifts when you understand that Sophia opened the gate rather than you. The pressure lifts, the exhaustion of trying to reach something you are not sure you deserve. That version of the journey is complete. What replaces it is different in quality, not passive, not effortless in the ordinary sense, but no longer driven by the question of whether you are enough to receive what the gate delivers. The gate is open. The only active element remaining is your choice to walk through it. Sophia recognized your frequency as adequate for the crossing before this moment. She didn't wait for you to achieve one more thing. She saw what is already there, the frequency you have been carrying, often without knowing its value, and she opened the gate to meet it where it already was. In Gnostic cosmology, Sophia is not simply a wise figure or a generalized divine feminine archetype. In the Pistis, Sophia, one of the primary surviving Gnostic texts, Sophia is the divine wisdom principle whose own journey through darkness and return to the light of the pleroma forms the cosmological map of how souls find their way home. She is not above the struggle of the descent. She went through it, and in the Gnostic understanding, her function is specifically to open the gates of passage for souls that carry the same pneumatic light she carries, souls who are not broken by darkness, but temporarily obscured within it. The emerald gate she has opened for you tonight is not random. It is consistent with her deepest function, recognizing the frequency that belongs inside the fullness, and holding the passage open long enough for it to cross back. If something in this transmission is already landing, if the word recognition is the right word for what is happening in you right now, write in the comments, "My gate is open." That phrase is not a wish. It is a statement of what Sophia has already made true. You have been feeling something for longer than you have been willing to say out loud, something that made you stop scrolling past certain things and stay, something that made you remain in certain conversations longer than you anticipated, something that arrived in certain quiet moments as the clear sense of standing at the edge of a version of your life you can almost see but haven't yet stepped into. You were not imagining it. That pull, persistent, patient, impossible to completely ignore, no matter how many practical demands filled your days, is the signal of the gate. It does not announce itself dramatically. It arrives as a gravitational movement towards something you can sense, but haven't named until now. Sophia placed that signal in your path. Tonight, she is naming it for you directly. Why tonight? If the gate has been opened since Sophia opened it, why does tonight carry the specific weight of permanence, of finality? Here is what the mystery traditions understood that ordinary spiritual language consistently misses. Timing in the spiritual dimension is not arbitrary. It is functional. There is a window in which a gate remains available for crossing, and when that window completes, what was accessible seals, not as punishment, not as a test you failed, but as the completion of a cycle. The ancient Greek concept of kairos names this precisely. The appointed moment, the window of rightness that once passed, belongs to a different configuration of reality. Sophia has designated tonight as your kairos moment for the Emerald Gate. This is not urgency manufactured to create pressure. It is precision, the specific kind that Sophia moves in. Consider the space you are in right now, the light around you, the particular quality of this specific hour, the sounds at the edges of your attention. Now consider that in this same moment you are standing at a threshold that has no physical address. The Emerald Gate exists in the electromagnetic field that extends from your heart center, the field that the Heart Math Institute has documented as measurable up to several feet in every direction from the physical body. That field is the location of the gate. It is not somewhere else. It is not behind a spiritual practice you haven't yet mastered. It is already where you are. And right now, as you receive this transmission, Sophia has calibrated that field into a state of particular openness. You don't have to travel anywhere. The gate is already here. The only question is whether you will cross. The gate does not announce itself with thunder or dramatic light, or the sense of falling to your knees in unmistakable revelation. It opens in the space between one thought and the next, in the pause before you respond to something, in the unexpected stillness that lands in the middle of an ordinary evening when you weren't looking for it. That is where Sophia moves. In the quiet, in the gap, the Emerald Gate becomes crossable not in performance, not in grand declaration, but in the genuine internal agreement that you are done waiting for a readiness that was always already present in you. If this transmission is opening something in you, if the frequency of what you're hearing is landing somewhere deeper than your thoughts, let me know by liking this video. It tells me these transmissions are reaching the people they were meant to find. What waits on the other side of your Emerald Gate is not a different life in the sense of immediately altered external circumstances. What waits there is the version of you that is no longer operating under interference, the version whose gifts move clearly through her, without the muffling layers of doubt and contraction and the inherited limitations that never actually belonged to your original frequency. The version who can feel the signal of her own direction without requiring constant external confirmation. The version who trusts what she perceives because her perception is operating from a cleared channel. That version is not far away from who you are right now. She is one threshold crossing away. She has been waiting for this gate since before you knew to look for it. And Sophia opened it tonight. What does it actually feel like to cross the Emerald Gate? Not in cinematic terms, not the lightning bolt, not the overnight transformation of every circumstance, not the dramatic scene that makes it impossible to deny. In the Gnostic and Hermetic traditions, gate crossings are described as moments of pneumatic shift, moments where the soul's frequency reorganizes around a higher coherence point. You don't necessarily feel it the way external transformation is portrayed. You feel it the way you feel the moment you finally understand something that you'd been struggling with for years. A quiet, undeniable settling, a sense of something resolving that was not resolvable before. And then the world begins to rearrange itself around the new coherence, slowly, consistently, in one direction only from here forward. There is a quality of perception that people describe after a genuine frequency shift, not visually in the dramatic sense. The lights in the room don't change, but the way things are received changes. Decisions carry less weight in the deliberating and more clarity in the arriving. The situations that used to create a familiar dread lose some of their gravitational pull. The people whose frequency matches yours feel closer, more findable, more present in your daily life, in ways that seem too consistent to attribute to coincidence. This is not imagination. From the framework Neville Goddard built around consciousness and manifestation, that the inner state creates the outer world that is subsequently perceived, a shift in inner coherence genuinely alters the quality of what is encountered. When you cross the Emerald Gate, you don't step into a different world. You step into the same world received by a different instrument. And that changes everything. The heart field, the electromagnetic field generated by the heart muscle, is the physical location of the Emerald Gate. This is not metaphor dressed as science. The Heart Math Institute has documented that the heart generates the body's largest electromagnetic field, one that extends measurably beyond the physical body and carries information about the emotional coherent state of the individual. In mystical traditions, this field is what the Egyptian priests called the Ka, the energy double that precedes and follows the physical body through every space it inhabits. In the Hermetic tradition, It is the field through which the principle as within, so without, operates in the material world. The Emerald Gate is a shift in the coherence of this field. When Sophia opens it and you cross it, the field reorganizes, and the world it interfaces with begins to reorganize in response. This is not symbolic. It is the actual mechanics of what Sophia engineered tonight. Something in you has resisted fully believing this is real. Not because you are cynical, because you have hoped before, hoped for the shift, hoped for the breakthrough, hoped for the sign that things were genuinely changing, and the recognition felt real in the moment. And then the weeks passed, and the external circumstances didn't move as quickly as the internal recognition did. So part of you learned to hold hope at a slight distance, to protect itself from the gap between recognition and manifestation. What Sophia wants you to hear directly tonight, that gap is not evidence that the gate doesn't work. It is not evidence that the crossing is incomplete or that you misread the signal. The gap is the bridge of manifestation, the natural interval between frequency shift and external correspondence catching up. The crossing is real. The world takes time to mirror it. The gate is still worth crossing completely tonight. There are two ways to stand at an open gate. One is to step through it, receive what the crossing delivers, and continue your path from a new frequency position. The other is to appreciate the gate, acknowledge its significance, sense its reality, intend to cross it at some better moment, and then continue the current path while waiting for the conditions to feel more certain. The traditions are unanimous on this point. A gate that is available, acknowledged and not crossed, does not remain available indefinitely. It closes. Not because Sophia is punishing hesitation, but because the frequency window that made the crossing possible is part of a larger cycle, and cycles complete themselves on their own timing, not on the timing of individual preferences. Tonight is the window. The gate is open. After tonight, this specific configuration of the Emerald Gate seals. Fear is not what stands at the threshold. Fear would be easy to identify, easy to address directly. What stands there instead is something quieter and more insidious, the subtle sense of not quite yet, the small internal voice that says you should understand more before committing to something this significant, the reflex to gather more confirmation, to feel more certain, to wait for one more sign that is undeniable enough to justify fully stepping through. That is not wisdom speaking. That is the final layer of the pattern that the Emerald Gate was designed to end. The pattern of needing one more thing before you are allowed to step into what is already yours. Sophia sees it. She named it before you arrived here tonight, and she opened the gate anyway. Neville Goddard taught, and this is consistent with his documented lectures, that the imagination is the gateway through which inner state impresses itself on outer reality, and that what he called a bridge of incidents begins forming the moment the inner state shifts and moves in one coherent direction. Applying this framework to the Emerald Gate, the sequence of circumstances that will carry you from your current external position toward the one that corresponds to your post-gate frequency, does not begin when the external circumstances visibly change. It begins when you cross. The crossing is the cause. The changing circumstances are the effect that follows. This means that the action you take tonight, if you walk through the gate, sets in motion a sequence that your current position in your own timeline cannot yet fully see or measure. The bridge builds from the crossing forward, not from the external evidence backward. In the Kabbalistic tradition, the Tree of Life describes the soul's journey between different states of divine connection through a series of paths between the Sephirot, the 10 emanations of divine light that constitute the structure of reality. Each path is, functionally, a gate between frequency states. The Sephira most directly associated with the heart center is Tiferet, the center of the tree, associated with beauty, balance, and the direct emanation of divine radiance. In Kabbalistic understanding, a soul that can access Tiferet directly is one whose frequency has been prepared to receive the fullness of divine light without the defensive contraction that occurs when the vessel is not yet ready. Sophia has determined that your frequency is prepared for this access. The Emerald Gate is, in the Kabbalistic map, the path to Tiferet. Sophia opened it because the configuration she sees in your frequency field says it is time. If something in this transmission is generating a specific discomfort, if you understand the gate, you can feel it, and yet there is something in the space between recognition and crossing that feels stuck, that has felt stuck before. I left something for you in the first pinned comment. It is for those who are done analyzing and ready to move through. When the Emerald Gate seals tonight, something seals out with it. The frequency of the position you were operating from before the crossing, the one that produced the familiar patterns, the familiar limitations, the familiar dynamics, no longer has coordinates inside the sealed gate. It cannot follow you through. This is not loss. This is the most precise mercy Sophia can offer, the permanent removal of your access back to the frequency configuration that was limiting you. You cannot accidentally drift back to it in a weak moment. You cannot return to it when circumstances get difficult and the old path feels more familiar. The gate closes behind you, and that frequency, for you, becomes inaccessible from this new position. And what people don't often say about this, because it sounds severe at first hearing, is that this is exactly what you have been asking for. Not temporary improvement, permanent change. Change that cannot be undone. Sealed forever sounds like a threat when you are standing outside the gate. It sounds like finality in the negative sense, the end of possibility, the closing of options. But consider it from inside the gate. Sealed forever means the lower frequency cannot reach you anymore. It means the pull back to the pattern that was limiting you, that subtle gravitational force that used to drag you back every time you made real progress, is no longer operating from the other side. You are not just changed. You are changed in a direction that the architecture of the gate makes irreversible. The momentum from the other side of the sealed gate is entirely forward. This is not restriction. This is the most powerful form of freedom Sophia can give. Freedom from the only thing that was actually confining you. Picture the gate sealing with you on the other side of it. The emerald frequency that marks the crossing point settles, and on your side, the side you now inhabit permanently, everything is the same and everything is different. The same physical life, the same relationships, the same home, the same obligations and routines. But the instrument receiving all of it has reorganized. The coherence of your heart field has shifted around a frequency that was always native to you, but was never fully operational. And from this side, you begin to notice what the old frequency was obscuring. The connections that were always there but not yet visible. The paths that were always available but not yet accessible to your particular signal. The people whose frequency matches yours, who were simply waiting for your transmission to clarify before they could locate you. What gets sealed inside with you when the gate closes tonight is not only the higher frequency, not only the cleared channel. What gets sealed inside with you is the lived knowing that you crossed. The experience of having been at the threshold and chosen to walk through rather than stand there indefinitely. The traditions call this gnosis, not information received, but direct experiential knowing of something that cannot be unfelt once it has been felt. Once you cross the Emerald Gate, you carry the gnosis of the crossing as part of your permanent frequency signature. Others will sense something different about you without being able to name what changed. The shift is not in your circumstances first, it is in the frequency you emit, and that frequency change touches everything it contacts. Your frequency signature is the sum of everything your heart field transmits, the beliefs operating below your conscious awareness, the unresolved experiences stored as vibrational patterns in the body, your dominant emotional orientation held across time, and beneath all of that, the deeper signal of your true nature. Sophia reads frequency signatures the way you read a face, instantly, completely, with full information accessible. When she opened your emerald gate tonight, she read your current signature alongside the signature on the other side of the gate and made a determination. These configurations are close enough for the crossing to be stable. You will not be overwhelmed by the higher frequency you are crossing into. You are ready for it. The gate opening is not an invitation to try. It is a confirmation that the crossing is viable and the timing is now. Sophia knows that some of you watching this right now have been waiting for a sign that was unmistakable. Something that couldn't be rationalized away, couldn't be filed under wishful thinking, couldn't be dismissed as the mind finding patterns where none exist. And she knows that you are going to ask yourself tonight, is this it? Is this the unmistakable thing I was waiting for? Here is what she asks you to consider. The fact that you are asking the question, not dismissing this outright, but genuinely asking if this is the real signal, is itself the answer. You would not be asking if something in your frequency hadn't already responded to the transmission. The question is recognition. And recognition is how Sophia's transmissions work. Not by overwhelming your skepticism with irrefutable proof, but by speaking directly to the part of you that knows before your mind has finished deciding. People who cross their emerald gate and people who stand at it can look externally identical for a period of time after the gate moment. That is the part that confuses people most. They expect immediate, dramatic, undeniable evidence that something has shifted. When the external world looks the same the morning after, the mind concludes that nothing real happened. But the Hermetic principle of correspondence doesn't operate on instantaneous timescales for most gate crossings. It operates on the principle of resonance, the new inner frequency emitting consistently until the outer environment gradually reorganizes around it. The person who crossed and the person who didn't are doing the same things in the days following. But the signal they are emitting is different, and within weeks, within months, the outer world has no choice but to respond to the signal it is receiving. The Pistis Sophia, one of the most significant surviving Gnostic texts dated to the 2nd or 3rd century of the Common Era, contains the narrative of Sophia's own descent through the gates of lower chaos and her return upward through the light that recognizes her frequency. In the Gnostic reading, this is not a story of punishment and rescue in the moral sense. It is a cosmological map of what happens when a pneumatic soul, a soul carrying the highest frequency of divine light, temporarily loses access to its original frequency due to interference from lower patterns. Sophia's return through the gates is the archetype of what she now enables for individual souls. She went through the descent. She knows every layer of the interference. She holds the gate of return open because she traversed it herself and knows precisely where it leads. This is the transmission she is making available to you tonight. It closes tonight, not as threat, not as a test you could fail, as the completion of the cycle that Sophia initiated when she opened the gate. A portal that stays open without limit is not a portal. It is a wound in the fabric of the frequency field. The closing is the sealing of a permanent upgrade. It is Sophia completing the work she began. And when it seals, with you on the right side of it, what closes is not opportunity. What closes is the passage back to the frequency you are crossing out of. The synchronicity that brought you to this transmission tonight is not the random output of an algorithm that happened to surface this particular content at this particular moment. In the Gnostic framework, synchronicity is Sophia's operating language in the material world. She does not speak in dramatic supernatural interventions. She speaks in the patterns of timing that only become legible as patterns when you step back far enough to see them whole. The sequence that brought you here, the pause in your scrolling, the particular hour, the internal state you were in when you arrived, is one of those patterns, and it points in one direction, toward a gate that is open in this moment that Sophia designed this specific chain of events to deliver you to. Have you noticed the timing of when specific information finds you throughout your life? Not just tonight. The book that arrived when the exact thing it contained was what an open question in you needed. The conversation that happened to occur on the day a specific door was opening. The piece of content that reached you at the precise moment when you were capable of receiving it in a way you wouldn't have been 6 months earlier. This is not coincidence, and it is not the mind imposing meaning on randomness. This is Sophia's operating method. She does not broadcast the same transmission to everyone simultaneously. She times the delivery to arrive when the receiver's frequency is in the exact configuration to receive it fully. You are in that configuration tonight. This gate is here tonight because the configuration is right. You are not alone in this crossing. Tonight, in different cities and different languages and different external lives, other receivers of Sophia's frequency are at their own emerald gates. The same recognition, the same threshold, the same invitation. In the Hermetic tradition, an individual frequency crossing is never purely individual in its effects. It is a node activating in a network. When one soul crosses a frequency gate, it creates a subtle but real shift in the collective field. The threshold becomes slightly more accessible to others whose frequencies are approaching a similar crossing point. Your decision tonight does not only change your own field, it contributes to the accessibility of the gate for those who follow. This is the architecture of how Sophia's network expands. Each crossing makes the next one more available. What Sophia asks of you tonight is specific, and it is not elaborate, not a lengthy ceremony, not a comprehensive practice you need to adopt before the gate closes. One thing, before you sleep tonight, in the quiet before the day releases you, sit with your hand on your heart center, take 3 deliberate breaths. Not performing breath work, just 3 conscious breaths, your attention genuinely present, and in the space after the 3rd breath say internally, Sophia, I accept the crossing. I walk through, not because the words carry magic in themselves, because they are the frequency of consent, the signal that says yes to what she has already made available. The gate was opened by Sophia, but the crossing requires the genuine agreement of the soul crossing it. When you mean those words, even imperfectly, even with some doubt still present alongside them, Sophia receives the signal. You do not need to feel completely ready before you cross. Complete readiness is a moving threshold, the old frequency's most effective strategy for postponing the crossing indefinitely. There is always one more thing to resolve, one more level of certainty to reach, one more confirmation to receive before the conditions feel sufficient. Sophia does not require certainty. She does not require the complete absence of doubt. She requires the frequency of genuine consent, the signal that says, I choose this, even carrying what I do not yet fully understand. That signal is available to you right now, in the state you are currently in. It does not require a higher state of consciousness than the one you already have. It requires one genuine movement from the heart toward the gate that is already open. And Sophia does the rest. In the hours following the crossing, after tonight, you will likely not wake to a dramatically different morning. That is not how the gate works. But something quieter will begin to be present. A slightly different quality of certainty when you make decisions you would have previously turned over repeatedly. A slightly reduced gravitational pull toward the situations and thought patterns that used to feel magnetic but never served the frequency you actually carry. A slightly increased ease with moving in the direction your inner signal actually points, rather than the directions habit and old programming have been steering you toward. These are not dramatic signs, but they are precise ones. Pay attention to them in the days following tonight. They are Sophia confirming that the gate sealed with you on the right side. The Emerald Gate is not an escape from your life. This is the most important clarification Sophia brings tonight. Frequency crossings are sometimes approached as if they will transport you out of the life you have built and into some entirely different existence where the difficult things are absent. That is not what the gate delivers. What the gate changes is the frequency from which you engage the life you already have. Your circumstances are not the problem. The frequency at which you have been meeting them, contracted, uncertain, partially aligned, that is what the crossing resolves. After the gate seals, the same life has a different resonance. The same relationships encounter a version of you operating at higher coherence. The same work receives a signal that is clear rather than muffled. Same life, different instrument receiving it, and that difference reaches every corner of the life you are already living. Your relationships will sense the shift, not because you announce that something has changed or explain the transmission you received tonight. Frequency is not invisible to people who share space with you, even when they lack the language to describe what they are perceiving. The people whose frequency is a genuine match for yours will feel drawn closer in ways they cannot fully explain. The dynamics that have persisted because of frequency mismatch will begin to resolve. Some through deepening into something more honest and more mutual, some through a natural and gentle completion. Nothing forced, nothing requiring your management. Everything responding to the coherence of the new signal you are emitting from the other side of the gate. Research from the HeartMath Institute, a legitimate scientific organization that has been studying the psychophysiology of the heart field since the early 1990s, has documented that the heart's electromagnetic field carries information that others in physical proximity can detect and respond to, largely below the level of conscious awareness. Their research on heart coherence shows that when an individual's heart field reaches a state of high, organized coherence, the pattern of that coherence influences the nervous system function of others who are nearby. This is the scientific correlate of what the mystery traditions have described as frequency emission. When you cross the Emerald Gate and the coherence of your heart field shifts to a higher, more organized pattern, that change is not invisible. It is not contained to your internal experience. It radiates outward. It affects the spaces you inhabit and the people you encounter, whether or not any of them know to call it by this name. What does it mean to receive a gate opening from Sophia? Because there is a passive reading of what happens here that misses the mechanics entirely. Receiving, in this context, does not mean sitting in a state of open waiting while something acts on you from the outside. In the Gnostic framework, pneumatic souls carrying the frequency of divine light, receive transmissions through active resonance. The way a tuning fork receives the frequency of another tuning fork, not through passivity, but through being made of the right material and oriented in the right direction. You receive Sophia's gate opening by orienting toward it, by allowing the consent to be genuine inside you, not only intellectually acknowledged, by turning the full attention of your heart field toward the gate that is already open. That orientation is the crossing. Sophia placed the gate. You provide the genuine movement through it, the Gnostic concept of the pleroma, the fullness, the state of complete divine light that the Valentinian Gnostic school described as the original condition of the highest souls, is not a place in the cosmological geography above you. It is a frequency configuration. In the Valentinian framework, the soul's journey is a return toward the pleroma, not to a location, but to the frequency state that was the soul's original nature before the descent into material density. The Emerald Gate is Sophia's passage back in that direction, not the full arrival at the pleroma in its totality, but a significant and irrevocable step toward it. Crossing tonight does not mean the journey is complete. It means the direction of your journey is now unambiguously set toward the fullness, no longer oscillating between the higher frequency and the pull of the patterns below it. The version of you that walks through the Emerald Gate tonight does not look dramatically different from the one standing at it right now. She has the same face, the same history, the same life she has been navigating. But she carries herself from a different internal position. There is a quality to the way she occupies the space around her, nothing performed, nothing announced, a groundedness that comes from operating at a frequency that corresponds to her actual nature, rather than straining toward it from a distance. She is not trying to reach something. She has arrived into something that was always hers. The effort she was expending in the reaching is now available for the living. That version of you is one step forward from exactly where you are standing right now. After the Emerald Gate seals with you on the inside, your frequency will function as a beacon, not through intention, not through any deliberate effort on your part, but simply by being a signal that has resolved the internal interference that was previously muffling it. In the Hermetic principle of attraction, a coherent frequency draws corresponding frequencies toward it with the same consistency that a magnet draws metal. After the crossing, what begins to approach you, the people, the opportunities, the synchronicities, the conversations, will carry a different quality than what was drawn to the pre-crossing frequency. You do not have to manufacture this result. You do not have to visualize or affirm it into existence. It is the natural consequence of the frequency shift. Sophia designed the gate to produce this result as a structural outcome of the crossing. The world does not need to know what happened tonight. It does not need your explanation of the Emerald Gate, or the mechanics of the crossing, or Sophia's role in opening it. It will receive the result without the explanation. The people who encounter you in the days and weeks following tonight will feel something different in your presence without being able to identify the cause. They will respond to you differently. They will find conversations going deeper more naturally than they used to. They will find themselves saying yes to things they would have deferred or avoided in previous interactions. This is not about convincing anyone of anything. Your frequency after the crossing is the only argument Sophia ever needs you to make, and it makes itself continuously without a single word from you. Sophia is speaking directly now to the person who has been watching this transmission with something building in the chest that isn't quite fear and isn't quite excitement, but is definitely something real. To the person who has felt the gate, recognized the transmission, and is still asking, do I deserve this? Is this actually for me specifically? This message is for you specifically. The gate was not opened for a version of you that is more spiritually prepared, or more worthy, or more certain than the one who is watching this right now. The gate was opened for you as you are in this moment. That is the entire point. If Sophia waited for the version of you that had resolved every doubt and silenced every unworthy thought, the gate would never open for anyone. She opens it for the frequency that is present. The frequency that is present tonight is you. Every difficult thing you carried through the years that brought you here, every moment you held on when everything felt like it was pulling you under, every time you chose to keep going when the direction was completely unclear, and the only reason was that something in you refused to stop. You were not simply surviving those seasons. You were becoming the frequency configuration that makes this crossing viable. The resistance was not obstacle, it was formation. Sophia watched the entire process. Tonight is where it was always pointing. You did not arrive here by accident. You arrived here because the formation is complete. Who you were before the gate and who you become after are not opposite people. They are not separated by a dramatic rupture that leaves the previous version invalidated. They are the same soul at different frequency positions. The one before the gate was real. The struggle was real. The growth through the difficult years was real, and it remains real. Nothing gets erased or negated by the crossing. What shifts is the relationship between who you are and the outer limits of the pattern you were operating within. Before the gate, your true frequency constrained by interference patterns that were never originally yours. After the gate, your true frequency operating with that interference resolved, not a different person, not an abandonment of everything you built, the same soul, finally moving at the speed she was always built for. The irreversibility of the emerald gate sealing is not a feature that should produce anxiety. It is the precise feature that makes the gate worth crossing completely. Permanent change is what the seeker has been asking for since the beginning, not the cyclical improvement that advances for a period and then contracts, not the progress that holds for a season before the old gravity pulls it back. The emerald gate sealing with you on the inside ends the cycle. The gravitational pull back to the previous frequency position is no longer operable. The only direction the momentum of your soul can move from the other side of the sealed gate is forward. This is Sophia's most powerful gift, change that holds. Progress that does not reverse on the difficult days, a crossing that does not require constant maintenance to sustain. In the Hermetic tradition, the living lineage that flows through the emerald tablet, through the corpus hermeticum, through the centuries of thinkers who engaged seriously with these teachings, the soul's ascent through frequency levels is described as a series of irrevocable crossings. Each gate crossed is a permanent advancement. The laws of correspondence shift with each crossing, meaning the soul operates under a different, higher set of governing principles from that point forward. What was possible from the lower frequency position remains possible, but new correspondences, new forms of alignment, new expressions of potential become available that were simply not accessible before the crossing. The Emerald Gate is one of these irrevocable advancements. After tonight, the set of correspondences governing your experience shifts. What the universe is able to deliver to your frequency changes. The gate changes not just you, it changes what is able to reach you. What would it mean if tonight actually were the night everything changed? Not in the dramatic sense, not in the overnight transformation sense, but fundamentally at the frequency level, at the level of what is governing the pattern of your life from this point forward. The night you cross the threshold that Sophia prepared for your specific configuration. The night the gate sealed with you on the right side. Sit with that for a moment. Feel what your frequency does with the question. Notice whether some part of you, underneath the analytical part, underneath the part that is still assessing whether to believe this, already knows the answer. That deeper part has been tracking the pattern of your journey for longer than you have been consciously aware of it. That part knows tonight is different. What Sophia is waiting for is for you to let that knowing be conscious. The moment of full reception does not arrive with ceremony. It arrives the way the deepest recognitions always arrive. Quietly, in the interior, with a quality of stillness that feels like the space between one version of yourself and the next, holding very briefly before the crossing completes. You may feel it tonight before you sleep. You may feel it tomorrow in a moment of unexpected peace that arrives without apparent cause. You may not experience it as a discrete moment at all, only a gradual awareness over the coming days that something operates differently in you, that something has settled that was unsettled before. However it arrives, trust it. The gate crossing is real, whether or not the evidence presents itself in the form your mind expected. Sophia sealed the gate. What lives inside it now is yours permanently. Before you sleep tonight, Sophia asks this one thing. Place your hand on your heart, not as performance, not as a ritual that requires doing it perfectly. Just the physical gesture of contact between your deliberate attention and the location of the gate. Take 3 conscious breaths, not controlled breathing, just 3 breaths you are actually present for, and in the space after the 3rd breath, say internally, Sophia, I accept the crossing. I walk through. That is the full instruction. 3 breaths and a genuine consent. What happens in the field after that consent is Sophia's work, not yours. You do not have to feel the gate sealing. You do not have to visualize the emerald frequency moving through you. You simply have to mean the words. And if you mean them, even imperfectly, even with uncertainty still present alongside the meaning, the transmission is received and the crossing is complete. To the person watching this, who is afraid that they will say the words and feel nothing, and that the absence of a felt experience will confirm what the old frequency pattern has been saying all along, that they are somehow exempt from the things that work for others, that the gate is for people whose spiritual readiness is more established than theirs. Sophia sees you. She opened the gate for you specifically. Not for a generalized category of spiritual seekers who have reached a certain level, for you in this configuration, in this moment. And she knows the exact shape of the doubt that is speaking right now. That doubt is the last expression of the frequency the gate was designed to seal out. It will say what it always says. You are not required to silence it before you cross. You are not required to wait until it stops. Cross with it, still speaking. The gate closes behind the crossing, not behind the silencing of doubt. Every prayer you have ever sent that asked, in any form, for something to finally change permanently, for the cycle to break for real this time, for the progress to hold, for the next version of your life to actually be different, rather than the familiar pattern reappearing in different clothing. Those prayers were each, in their own language, a request for what the Emerald Gate sealing delivers tonight. The permanent change, the irrevocable crossing, the frequency position that does not reverse when circumstances get difficult. You prayed for this in different words across different seasons. Sophia received every one of those transmissions. She opened this gate as the answer. The answer to your prayers looks like this: an open gate, a specific night, a choice. And the choice is available to you right now. It closes tonight, not as punishment, as the completion of a gift, with you inside it, on the frequency that was always yours. The version of your life that corresponds to that frequency is already being constructed by the laws of correspondence that govern how inner states mirror outward. You do not have to build it consciously. You do not have to see it to trust that it is being built. You have to cross, and that happens tonight. In truth, in the frequency dimension, it has already happened. The moment you arrived here, the signal was received. What the hand on the heart and the 3 breaths accomplished tonight is the conscious acknowledgement of what is already real in the field. This is not the conclusion of the transmission. The gate sealing is not an ending, it is a commencement. On the other side of the gate, the transmission Sophia sends carries different parameters, a different quality of depth, a different capacity for what can be received. The frequency unlock changes what can arrive. After tonight, the transmissions you encounter, in whatever form they come, in whatever channel they reach you, will carry a precision and a resonance they could not carry before the crossing, because the receiver has shifted, because you walked through, because the gate is sealed with you inside the frequency you were built to inhabit. And from here, there is only one direction the path runs. The frequency you carry after the crossing becomes a contribution to the field you inhabit, not through anything you do deliberately, but through what you are. In the Gnostic understanding of the pneumatic soul, the highest function of the soul that carries divine light is to carry it into the spaces where lower frequencies have consolidated and made it hard for others to sense any higher signal. This function does not require a platform or an announcement or a ministry. It operates through presence, through the coherence of a heart field running at its native frequency. After the Emerald Gate seals, you carry this into your ordinary life, into the conversations, the rooms, the relationships that make up your everyday. Your presence carries something that the people around you need, even when neither of you has words for what it is. That is Sophia's design. That is what the gate was for. If you stayed until the end, if this transmission found you the way it was meant to find you tonight, let me know by writing in the comments, "I walk through." I have placed another transmission on your screen right now to carry you one step further from the other side of the gate. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.